Folks, this is the most incredible thing. The drive-bys, the state-controlled media, predictably, are going bonkers over Sarah Palin and her book, her appearance on Oprah. We'll be talking to her tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, the top of the second hour of this program. We did an interview late last week with her for the next issue of the Limbaugh letter. The Associated Press got an advance copy of her book, Going Rogue. They assigned 11 reporters to try to find any errors in it. You hear about this? The 11 reporters collaborated on an article titled Fact Check, Palin's Book Goes Rogue on Some Facts. In fact, though, the AP's catalog of alleged errors, they found 6 in a 400-page book, is very thin at best. The Powerline blog people reported this. It took 11 people to find 6 mistakes. That's not even one mistake per reporter. Here's how the AP starts. Palin says she made frugality a point when traveling on state business as Alaska governor, asking only for reasonably priced rooms and not often going for the high-end robe and slippers hotels. The facts? Although she usually opted for less pricey hotels while governor, Palin and daughter Bristol stayed 5 days and 4 nights at the $700 per night Essex House Luxury Hotel, robes and slippers come standard, for a 5-hour women's leadership conference in New York in October. With airfare, the cost to Alaska was well over $3,000. Now, Palin says she didn't often stay at high-end hotels, and the AP counters by saying, yes, she did one time that we could find. She didn't say, I never. She say, I didn't often. I usually, did not often stay in these high-priced hotels. So she says she didn't often stay at a high-end hotel, and the AP counters by saying, yes, she did. Yes, she did one time. Yeah, that's why she said not often, rather than never. Now, what's indisputable is that Palin sold the governor's private jet and flew commercial. I even talked to her about that last week in the interview. That saved the taxpayers a large amount of money, qualifying her as a frugal traveler. Here's another. They quote her from the book as writing, Palin rails against taxpayer-financed bailouts, which she attributes to Obama. She recounts telling daughter Bristol that to succeed in business, you'll have to be brave enough to fail. The facts, according to AP, Palin is blurring Obama's stimulus plan, a $787 billion package of tax cuts, state aid, social programs, and government contracts, and the federal bailout that President George W. Bush signed. Palin's views on bailouts appeared to evolve as McCain's vice presidential running mate. In September 2008, she said taxpayers cannot be looked to bail out Wall Street. The next month, she praised McCain for being instrumental in bringing folks together to pass the $700 billion bailout. After that, she said, it's time of crisis, and government did have to step in. Now, the AP doesn't quote Palin, so it's hard to say whether she blurs the bailouts or not. But by the AP's own account, Palin has consistently opposed bailouts, except that during the presidential campaign, when she has to loyally support her running mate, who is McCain, the presidential candidate. That's what vice presidential candidates are supposed to do. This is not a fact check. This is what vice presidents do. That's why she was running, frustrated us all, if you remember, running around using that word maverick all the time because the campaign wanted her to refer to McCain that way. They thought that characterization was going to put McCain over the top. He's a maverick. He's a Washington outsider. He can reach across the aisle and work with the Democrats. The next one, the people at Powerline say, if somebody don't believe, Palin welcomes last year's Supreme Court decision deciding punitive damages for victims of the nation's largest oil spill tragedy, the Exxon Valdez, stating it had taken 20 years to achieve victory. As governor, she says she'd had the state argue in favor of the victims, and she says the court's ruling went in favor of the people. The facts, that response is at odds with her reaction at the time to the ruling, which resolved the case by reducing punitive damages for victims to $500 million to $2.5 billion. Palin said that she was extremely disappointed. It was tragic. So many fishermen and families put their lives on hold waiting for the decision. Now, again, In this supposed fact check, AP doesn't quote her, but rather asks us to take their word for the fact that Palin welcomes the Supreme Court's Exxon Valdez decision in her book as a ruling that went in favor of the people. Now, they are mischaracterizing what she says in the book. She criticized the Supreme Court decision at the time, as did most Alaskans, and cited it as a Supreme Court decision with which she disagreed in the Katie Couric interview. So, this is it, folks. I mean, this is the kind of error. 11 AP reporters, just like a wave of Democrat lawyers and reporters, was set up to Wasilla and Anchorage and Fairbanks when she was named the vice presidential running mate to McCain, to scour the countryside for any dirt they could find on her. 11 crackerjack AP reporters assigned to fact-check her book. Do any other author's books get fact-checked like this? Not that I can recall. But anyway, this is the best they could do. This is the best they could find. We have a brief timeout coming up here, ladies. Well, I know that liberals took after my book, but I mean I mean anybody on the other side get fact-checked. Nobody does. Remember last week after reading Sarah Palin's book and interviewing her, I said that it was one of the most substantive policy books I've read in a long time, and I said that the people that read this on the left are going to totally ignore it. They're going to focus on the soap opera stuff, the 10 pages or so out of 400 plus where she squares the record on the McCain campaign and what happened there. And lo and behold, and I know these people like every square inch of my continually shrinking, glorious, naked body.
Rush Limbaugh calling it one of the most substantive policy books he's ever read.
A policy book?
Rush Limbaugh says that this book is the most substantive policy book that he's read.
Rush Limbaugh calls it one of the truly substantive books I've read.
Rush Limbaugh today told his millions of listeners this was the most substantive policy book that Rush had ever read. Now, maybe Rush hasn't read any other books.
I heard Rush Limbaugh the other day say it was one of the most substantive policy books he'd ever read.
Rush, I cannot imagine you in full recline on your Gulfstream, Cuban cigar in hand, struggling to get through a more substantive policy book than Sarah's index and footnote-free, score-settling campaign memoir. No mind-numbing charts or graphs, no big words, no scholarly Latin phrases like caveat emptor. And I'll bet the pictures are, like, amazing.
Now, that's Lawrence O'Donnell. He was I guess he was on MSNBC. Former West Wing writer or consultant on the TV show when Martin Sheen was the president, and liberals in America actually thought they were watching the presidency when they watched that show. Now, let's see here. Some of these people actually admit to having heard me say this, which I don't believe. I think they all read it probably on a website, or else a fax or an email was sent around.